Talofa and Bulavinaka. My name is Esther Tirina Maheo, and my student ID is S11201954. Today, I'll explain about the learning theories, behavioral, cognitive, and social learning theories to classroom learning. The main focus of this presentation is based on the behavioral and cognitive and social culture theories. The aim is to explain each episode of the theories and relate to the classroom and the Pacific context. As part of this theory, I will discuss and analyze a learning episode for each theory, use experience to show why that theory best captures the learning episode, analyze each episode and relate it to the Pacific classroom context. Lastly, in order to reinforce the concepts of learning and the critical process for teachers within the framework of these learning theories, I will include example drawn from lectures, classroom discussion, experience, and hinted illustration with analysis. Firstly, I will explain the behavioral theory. The behavioral theory was founded by B.F. Skinner and Pavlov. It is defined as a learning of change in behavior due to conditioning. Some key process of this theory is stimulus response, reaction, reinforcement, and punishment. For instance, the dog classic conditioning. Behavioral learning theory explores the relationship between the stimuli and the reaction they react, stimulated how rewards or penalties led to learning. Ivan Pavlov conducted an experiment to demonstrate classical conditioning, as seen in the image. In this procedure, when a bell is connected to food, a dog will start to salivate at its sound. The reaction of salivation can be seen. This hypothesis is based on B. F. Skinner's conditioning theory. The conditioning looks at how rewards and penalties, either positive or negative, can change the behavior. Positive reinforcement uses rewards to change behavior in certain circumstances. Conversely, negative reinforcement suggests that unpleasant experience will be removed, which will cause the behavior to increase. One of the learning episodes of the behavioral perspective is, for example, the teacher uses a reward system such as stickers or reward to encourage homework completion. In this case, this will motivate students to gradually increase effort and engagement due to positive reinforcement. Moving on to the next theory is the cognitive learning theory. It was initiated by Jean Piaget and Jeremy Bernard. It is defined as a learning is an internal mental process involving memory and schema construction. It focuses on understanding, thinking, and problem solving. The main focus or the classroom focus is lesson, scaffolding, critical thinking, and etc. The internal mental process that learners use to process, store, and retrieve information are highlighted by the cognitive learning theory, while the behavior theory examines behavior that can be observed, but the cognitive learning theory tried to explain how learning occurs. And therefore, there are two factors of cognitive learning theory. First is the long-term memory, which stored in schema and then recalled for reasoning and problem solving. Second is the short-term memory, which is known as the working memory. It is where students may store and actively process information. Learning episode of the cognitive perspective. For instance, a geography teacher uses concept mapping to help students organize and connect ideas. Students learn by linking new information to prior knowledge schemas. Lastly is the social or social cultural learning theory. It was developed by Albert Bandura and Lev Vygotsky. Learning occurs through observation, imitation, and social interaction. It emphasizes language, culture, and cooperation. The classroom focuses on group learning and participation. The significance of social contact, membership, and involvement in cultural environment in learning are the main focus of the social cultural learning theory. Albert emphasizes modeling, imitation, and observational learning in his social learning theory. When they see others and observe the effects of their action, the students or the learners begin to adapt to new behaviors. The notion of the zone of proximal development (CPD), which is the gap between a person's potential development and their capacity to complete a task independently, is found in Lev Vygotsky's social culture theory. A scaffold is a short-term aid that helps a student progress toward greater levels of comprehension and independence. Therefore, this CPD, it's a notion that helps students to progress independent or to learn independently on their own without relying on to other students. One of the learning episode of social culture perspective is where group project where students collaborate, share roles, and learn from peers. Teachers scaffolds learning through questioning and dialogue. Peer tutoring, group projects, group work are all examples of social learning in the classroom. The expectation and ways of learning are also influenced by the cultural context. In various classrooms, students may actively participate in discussion learning activities and shared experience with the teacher and one another. Social theories provide richness of accountability. Analysis and implication. Behavioral best for shaping and reinforcing desired behaviors. Cognitive encourage deep understanding and transfer of learning. Social or social cultural theory fosters collaboration and to real world learning. These three effective teaching combines all these three perspective. Therefore, as I've mentioned before, in my experience as a teacher assistant for the behavioral episode, the students will receive awards if they raise their hand, asking question, or complete their homework. The teacher will reward them a award or a bonus mark towards their coursework. This episode demonstrate how reward cause the observable behavior to change, which is an example of the behavioral learning. And in a math lecture for cognitive episode, the teacher divided the problem of a algebra problem into the board with a visual flowchart and asked the student to help and explain each step of the reasoning. The student began to grasp the procedure by trying to draw the parallel in the visual chart. In this case, this shows that the student has have the idea and the memory and the knowledge which they have already learned from their previous class. This entire experience is an illustration of cognitive learning, in which working memory and internal mental processing were all important elements of this learning process. For the social culture episode, in my experience, there were a group of students had to create a basic machine for a science assignment. With the help of scaffolding, the students demonstrate and collaborate the necessary skills, which they be able to create a basic machine. Behavior analysis, cognitive analysis, and social culture analysis has been defined as not everyone in the student in a classroom will interrupt or create information in the same manner. Depend on their social background, this highlights the cultural aspects of learning. The design of the lesson to manage working memory, the ability to actively absorb information, and the use of scaffold is important for every learning classroom. Behavioral techniques are very effective with working with very young children for creating a active and proactive classroom. From the perspective of Pacific education, teaching and learning are centered on the relationship and the community. Therefore, the Pacific value upholds relationship based on respect that can be used to analyze all of these theories: behavioral, cognitive, and social cultural. To conclude, each learning theory offers unique insight into how students learn. Teachers should integrate this approach to enhance classroom learning. Learning is most effective when it connects the mind, behavior, and social context. For the last slide of the presentation is the sources that I have gathered and used for my presentation. That's all from my side, and Faf Tailasi, and thank you.